Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and I'm reading All New X-Men issue number 18. Guys, oh man, this was the Cyclops issue. If last issue was supposed to be the Iceman issue, the young Bobby Drake, this was the young Cyclops issue, and this was good. This was so good. Basically, we're right in the middle of the Inhumans versus X-Men storyline, directly in the attack on Adelan. Now, right afterwards, because, you know, he gets beaten up, he gets face-to-face with Medusa, he's not very helpful in the battle, because his heart just isn't into it. He's there because the X-Men are there, and that's what mutants do. They stick together. But the problem is that he just seems to have this huge problem with everything that's going on. And that's what the young X-Men were brought into this timeline for. They were brought in to be that moral consciousness that, hey man, the X-Men, the adult X-Men originals, have been in so much muck that they can't make tales of right or wrong, up or down, and moral and immoral anymore for the most part. They're just doing what they can to survive. When you're in survival mode, you can't really be a good guy. Young Scott, he mentions that. He's like, we're X-Men. Since when have we been about self-preservation as opposed to doing the right thing? Guys, I'm telling you right now, if you are a true X-Men fan, you're agreeing with me 100% in this. You're agreeing with young Scott in this. It's not about, oh, but the X-Men are getting beaten up and the X-Men... No. The X-Men have always been on the side of truth, even when it could potentially cost them their lives. And that's what it's all about. And this comic really reins it in. Guys, I know that this comic is just going to be forgotten and kind of left by the wayside one day, probably very soon. But when push comes to shove, this really is a very pivotal issue. And I cannot give Dennis Hopeless any more credit than to say that this was an amazing job at writing. Wow. Every single thing that Scott has had to deal with, young Scott has to deal with old Scott doing all the crazy things that he's been doing, or so he thought, so everybody thought, except for the Cuckoo sisters and Emma Frost. Everybody else didn't know. Well, okay, Magneto knew, but nobody else knew that Scott actually died of the Mpox, not facing Black Bolt and all of the evil things that Emma made old Scott seem to do with her illusions. So the X-Men get attacked by Mosaic. Mosaic comes in because we saw this before in an earlier issue that Mosaic and several of the other Inhumans who weren't in New Adelan are all being reformed, and they're coming in and they're trying to do what they can. Well, Mosaic tries to go after Magneto first, but Magneto's just way too strong mentally, even without the helmet, because this isn't a psychic attack, it's more of just a bodily possession thing. Well, so he's only in there for a couple of moments, and then he jumps straight into Scott, young Scott, and man, Scott is trying to have this conversation with him. He's going back and looking at his memories, and he's looking at the old memories of Magneto, because Mosaic always brings a little bit with him from the last person that he was just in. So Scott's looking at Magneto, a little bit that he could see, and he realizes that, oh man, this old Scott wasn't really going after Black Bolt and didn't destroy the Terrigen Mist, didn't lead that battle, didn't tell anybody to do all of this stuff. No. He actually said, don't let these people die, don't let it end. He didn't mean don't let the war end. Instead, he's just simply saying don't let us as a race end. And Stone-Eyed Emma, as Scott refers to it, is, man, she just took it to a whole new level, as we've been seeing. And Scott now realizes, because Magneto knew, she was telling Magneto, and he realizes, oh man, she was arranging all this stuff. So we're not entirely sure what Mosaic was doing, but he did have Scott steal a Quinjet, borrow a Quinjet. Did I just say a Quinjet? Okay, one of the Blackbirds, sorry. Wrong superhero team. Anyway, so he goes off and does something, and we'll find out what happens there pretty soon. In the meantime, Scott now has 12 hours of unconsciousness to sit and plot and plan, because that's how Mosaic's power works. He possesses you, and then 12 hours later you wake up after he finally leaves. So Scott says flat out, I'm going to reveal all of your plans, Emma. I'm going to tell everybody what you really did, and I'm going to give you an optic blast to the face. So this is just beautiful. And guys, this is the thing that eventually leads to young Scott joining the Champions. So, oh my God, Dennis Hopeless did such a great job on this. I'm actually going to go and join this guy on Twitter right now, because man, what incredible writing. This comic gets an A+, and that's the highest praise I could possibly give it. This comic is fantastic. Professor Bell, Comic Book University, class dismissed.